apple basket with swing handle remains a favorite of mine. I have loved handwork since I was a girl, and my earliest baskets, simple coiled pieces, were made in 1975. My husband, Scott Gilbert, and I were inspired by Sue Stevenson's book, Basketry of the Appalachian Mountains, when we started learning white oak, and Scott made me a lidded sewing basket using similar construction techniques to the apple basket. In the early 1980s, Scott and I studied with Ollie and Lestel Childress of Park City, Kentucky, and truly learned about white oak. And although most of the baskets that we made were rib style, Ollie made beautiful flower baskets that started with wide spokes, which she would narrow as she continued up the sides of the basket. I love the simplicity of the apple basket and the design. I especially like that white oak handle that's made in our shop in Allen County. This is an easy basket to make, and once you master a few techniques, I think you'll enjoy weaving a variety of spoke construction baskets. So first we'll take a look at tools and materials, then we'll lay out the base. Next we'll be weaving up the sides, and finally attach the handle and the rims. The apple basket is made with reed, a material that's cut from the rattan palm vine, and it's available in a variety of sizes and shapes. To make it flexible when you work with it, you want to soak it in some warm water, and depending on the size and thickness of the material, that's what determines the length of time of soaking. So with the flat material, I usually start with a couple of minutes in warm water, up to about 10 minutes for that heavier weight outside rim. And when you get ready to store the material away, be sure that it's completely dry and do not store it in plastic. After you soak your flat reed, you want to determine which is the smooth and which is the rough side. So typically I'll take it and bend it over my thumb, and I'll just see if I can rough up that side of it. And you can see some fraying going on. I do like to check the opposite side as well, and it's a bit smoother. Sometimes the rough side will reveal itself more as a graininess rather than fraying, but you do want to check every piece before you put it into your basket. To get started, I sort through my 1/4 inch material, and I find a couple of really flexible pieces that are nice and long, and I save those for the end to do the lashing. I also like a nice flexible piece to start my basket, so I set those aside, and I cut 16 pieces from the 1/2 inch flat reed that are 27 inches long, and each one of those pieces I determine the smooth versus the rough side, and this is my smooth side on the inside here, and I simply mark that with a pencil on each one of those. Now I'm ready to start the basket, and I select 8 spokes. One of the spokes, I take it and cut it right up the center. This will give us an odd number of spokes. We're going to do a continuous weave on the apple basket. And if you notice, these 2 spokes then are going to be half the width of the others. So I don't like to put any of my joins or overlaps along these spokes. I kind of treat them as a little bit of a tender spot. And I just cut that up to, about 1 inch from my center mark here. Next, we're going to lay out the base. And I want to start with this split spoke. And as I add all the spokes in, I will just cross them on their centers. And again, these are all smooth side up. So we continue to add. This is the 3rd spoke, and it bisects that area. fourth spoke. The fifth spoke is going to lay here. These are smooth side up and my centers are marked. And spoke number 7 will come here to the right hand side of the split. And spoke 8 to the left hand side. Now what's going to happen as you weave around this first row is that the spokes will want to move as you're working around that first row. So when your stitch gets to a spoke, just adjust the spokes as you go before you lay that stitch in. We're working with the smooth side of the spoke, so we also want to work with the smooth side of the weaver. And I'll place this weaver in between the split. And if I leave a tail that's 3 or 4 inches long, I can simply lay that tail right on top of spoke 8. And if I want to, I can even clip it just until I get back around. Perhaps I want to tighten up this beginning just a little bit so the weaver is pulled up against the edge of the spoke. And I will turn the weaver up on its edge, which allows the weaver to flow and come more evenly underneath that next spoke. Now what I see here is a tighter space, a more open space, so I'm going to adjust the spoke and then push the weaver up into it. To keep the work in front of me, I'll simply press down and rotate the spokes around. And now I'm ready to turn the weaver up on its edge, kind of support it here with my finger. Again, adjust that spoke if need be, and bring the weaver up to the spokes. Press and rotate. And I want to go around one complete time until I'm back to the split. I'm catching the tail of the weaver as I come across spoke number 8. I'm adjusting the spokes before placing the weaver. And I'd like this first round to be as much of a circle as I can make it. When I get back to the split, I separate out and create more space between that split. And I just take a look at my first row. If I want to tighten it up just a bit, I can adjust, pull the start in, and push the weaver a little bit tighter. So I'm happy with that shape, and I'll just continue around each row, turning the weaver on its side. Until I've gone about 8 rows. After I weave over this tail with the second weaver, I'll go in and trim that back. And continue on. As you weave around building your basket, eventually your weaver is going to come to an end and you need to add another one. So I'm going to show you how to do that at this point. One reason I want to do it now is because I want to do it so that the weaver will be long enough to catch 2 rows when we do the next step of adding the spokes. This weaver is coming to an end. I want to follow it along. And if it was a little bit longer and it wanted to join across that split spoke, I would cut it back some. And you want to take your scissors and trim the old end away at the edge of the spoke so that it goes across that whole length. And then check to see if your spokes are smooth side up or rough side up at this point, and they're smooth side up. So I want to join this weaver smooth side up as well. And the join goes back across 4 spokes. And I just lap the new weaver right on top of the old. I can push this forward so it's just long enough that again it will come to the edge of the spoke here. You could use a clip or a clothespin to hold this until you get around one more time if you wanted to. So let's do that. And I'm going to continue to weave. Now let's see how we count these rows right here at the split. This is where the first row started, and so as it finishes I count that as 1. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We want to go one more round before we add in the other 8 spokes. The weavers kind of cup up on their side a little bit, and that's just the nature of this particular construction. You've got a flat material and you're weaving it into a circle. This completes the 8th row, and we're also checking that we are on a row where the weaver is underneath the right hand side of the split, and that means that when we weave over the new spoke, we'll be holding that new spoke in place. So I line a new spoke, weave over the new and under the old, press the weaver up tight against the previous row, and lay in the next new spoke. You want to kind of align the spoke right where you're weaving, as well as across the center and into its space on the opposite side. At this point, we'll be adding in all 8 remaining spokes over the new and under the old. You may notice in your weaving that all of a sudden, when you look at the relationship of this row to the previous row, it appears that the previous row stitch is weaving over 3 of your spokes. That's just the nature of adding spokes to this basket. Continue on around until you've woven in both ends of these last spokes. We refer to this as a double bottom. So in essence, what we're doing is starting that second bottom with the addition of the final 8 spokes. Try to center those spokes in the space as you go. Those spokes can get a little crisscrossed, so just check that you're straightening them out as you go. I think that looks just beautiful. with those spokes laid in there. So you want to continue around one more complete row, and the next step will be to shape the base. The basket has a raised base or a hump in the center of it to the inside. So one more complete round, coming back to the split and just a couple of stitches beyond. If your weaver dries out while you're working, you can just spritz it a bit. Typically I don't spray and re-wet the entire base, the part that's already woven. Make some little adjustments as you go. So already you're beginning to think about the space that you have between your spokes, and you want it to be as even as possible all the way around. So we want to come just a couple stitches past the slip, and with the added spokes woven in with 2 complete rows, we're ready for the next step.